This is the Financially Simple Podcast, a show dedicated to destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner. And now, here's your host, pizza-loving, certified financial planner, Justin Goodbread.
Welcome to Financially Simple. This is a finance show for small business owners about money, how it works in our business and our personal lives, and how we can build wealth to be financially independent. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread. Today we continue with our series on growing the value of your business. Now, in the last few episodes, I spent a significant amount of time dealing with strategic planning, and today I want to close out the strategic planning process. Today we're specifically going to cover the tactics and the actions, those particular steps. Now, as a brief recap, if you've been following through this mini-series on the strategic planning process, we understand that I've laid out an acronym that we've been following through. And so the acronym is VMVS OSTA. So I call it VM OSTA. And so the VM stood for vision and mission. And we spent some time talking about what a vision is and what a mission is. And the next V stands for values. We talked about the values of the company and how it affects your strategic planning. Then we dealt with the S, which is the SWOT analysis. And in the SWOT analysis, we covered in detail the steps to identifying your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A few episodes ago, we dealt with the O, which is the objectives, and how we need to identify 3 specific objectives. Not 7, not 20, but 3. And then last episode, we spent some time talking about the strategies and specifically how to answer the messaging of our business in the growth process. So today we're going to complete the strategic planning process, and we're going to deal again with tactics and actions. A few episodes ago, whenever I was dealing with the objectives part of it, I said we need to work to identify 3 objectives you feel will best grow your company. And we said, one of the objectives should be financial in nature, but we do have to look at 3 objectives. Again, not 5, not 7. And the last episode, we talked about the strategies, and we talked about various things like the Bowman's Clock and the Ansoff Matrix and different strategies that we can use as business owners to help posture our business for growth, for value growth. Now, today is where we begin to vet out the strategies, or we're going to test the strategies. So the way we do that is we enter right into a tactic. And so the tactic of strategic planning is how the plan is going to move, or the how of the plan. The how is vital. It is vital to the functioning departments of your business. So whenever I say functioning departments, there are, as we identified many episodes ago, there are 8 different major areas of business. Out of those 8, 6 of them are functioning in nature. So the 6 functioning areas are sales and marketing, people and operations, accounting, and legal. Those are different departments. Now, in a small business, you may not have a sales department or a marketing department. You may not have a HR people department. You may not have operations or accounting or legal. In fact, you could be such a small business that you are the jack of all trades. I mean, you are the CEO, CFO, and toilet cleaner. I mean, you could be all 3 individuals in one. Or you could be a little bit more established and maybe have a little bit more flow going through the business. And now all of a sudden you're outsourcing your accounting and legal. And maybe you're outsourcing your marketing. Your sales is maybe you, the business owner. And maybe the HR is a spouse or some key employee on the team. I'm really not looking at these functional parts of business necessarily as true departments like we would look at with a huge corporation. But more importantly, we're looking at the how as it relates to these areas. And the how, or the tactics that we're talking about, must be designed and developed for those and by those doing the work. See, the tactics are typically dealing with about a 1-year time frame. And many times I'll see business owners, I call it the ivory tower effect. They'll sit in their metaphorical desk or their metaphorical vehicle. I have some clients who work out of their truck. And they travel all around, and they're the boss who drives up in the truck, gives some orders, and then leaves. Or I know some business owners who work out of an office. They're the corporate executive, and people will listen to the executive business owner. What we're dealing with in tactics, though, cannot be developed by the guy in the corner office or the gentleman pulling up in the truck. You can't have this happen. Instead, the how of the tactic must be developed by those actually doing the job. See, I once had this client who was trying to do the ivory office management, and he was trying to develop tactics for the operators of this business to follow from his AC office, as he was told. But the plans kept falling. And whenever I said, why don't we shift the development of this from you, the person who's barking orders, down to the people who actually knows how to affect change at the production level, let's let those individuals work to develop a job to help us meet the objective that we're trying to meet. Friends, it's vital for people who are actually doing the work at this phase of the game to be very involved in the how part of planning. It's vital. You can't change it. So remember, we're talking about a 1-year time frame. So we had 3 objectives, and out of those 3 objectives, now we're coming up with 3 different tactic per objectives. And I'm going to come back to the numbering here. But for our objectives, we're trying to find a tactic to help us reach our objective within about a 1-year time frame. That's the idea. But we can't just stop with the how. Now we have to get into the specific action steps for each tactic. We have to move in there. So you may say an objective is to grow the company by 20% profit margin. That could be the objective. The tactic could be we're going to increase brand awareness. That could be the tactic. Then you come to the action steps. Well, how are you going to increase brand awareness? So you may do a rebranding of the company. That could be an action. You may develop a marketing campaign that is organic or non-organic. In other words, going through the company's current employees, current customers. Or you may go a non-organic where you're going to actually use paid advertising. But that is the actions. It doesn't do us any good just to develop the tactic, just to say, hey, we're going to increase brand awareness. We actually have to know how. And so that's where the action comes in. Now, I have to tell you, whenever we're dealing with the actions, where the actual act of helping us reach our goals come to play, this is where failure occurs. See, so many people, we come up with great ideas. I can come up with 1,000 ideas tomorrow. The problem oftentimes is not the idea on how to reach success. It's the implementation to reach success. And so the action part, everything we've been doing through the vision, through the mission statement, through the values, through the SWOT analysis, our objectives, our strategies, our tactics, boil down to now feet on the ground. The boots on the ground is what the TV said a few years ago whenever we were dealing with conflict internationally. We're dealing with those individuals who are actually making change happen. We're dealing with what specific actions are we going to take to increase our objective or help us reach our objective. In order for an action to actually move the pendulum, I often say companies are like an aircraft carrier. You can't turn them like I can a speedboat. It takes a little while to turn a big aircraft carrier around. So that's what a company is. But we can make small, measurable actions and get the ship moved strategically. So an action has to be specific in nature. I mean, detailed down to the minute. So we may go back to our example and say an objective is to drive 20% margin, whereas our tactic is, okay, we're going to increase brand awareness is the tactic. Now the action may be, we're going to have an internal marketing campaign with current customers because of our Ansoff matrix. We know where we're at. We want to contact specific customers and see if we can offer a current product to our current customers who've not bought that product. That may be an action. So you have to be specific, but it also has to be measurable. You have to be able to track the progress to your goal. Remember, objectives are measurable, and the action steps are what we're actually targeting on a weekly basis to make sure we're reaching our goal.
You are listening to Financially Simple, destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner.
So to help clarify this, I want to draw a pattern for you in your mind. Now, in reality, if you go to the Financially Simple blog, we're going to have a graphic which explains this whole process in such clarity. But today, I'm going to try to draw a picture in your mind because I know many people like myself are listening to podcasts while we're exercising or while we're driving or while we're cooking dinner or something of that nature. That's when I typically listen to podcasts. So I want to try to relate something to you to help you understand how objectives, tactics, and actions fit together. So we know that we have 3 objectives. So in our 3 objectives, I want you to think in a Word document that you're going to start numbering some things. And so you're going to click on the little number button underneath the home screen that says you're going to pick the numbering effect of instead of the dots or the bullet points, we're just going to go with a 1, 2, 3. So the number 1 would be our first objective. And then we're going to hit enter. And we're going to tab over, and all of a sudden now we have a big letter A. So we have our first objective, and now we have our first tactic to help us reach our first objective. Now we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to tab over again. Now we're going to go into those little eyes, the 1 eye, the 2 eyes, and the 3 eyes. Those are going to be our 3 specific actions to help us reach our first tactic, which will help us reach our first objective. So whenever you look at this number 1, you're going to see the letter A, which is your first tactic. You're going to see the capital letter B, which is your second tactic. And you're going to see the capital letter C, which is your third tactic of your objective. So remember, we have 3 objectives. So we're going to have the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3. And underneath the number 1, we're going to have an A, a B, and a C. So that is our first, second, and third tactics to help us reach our first objective. Underneath this second objective, we're going to have a letter A, a letter B, and a letter C, which is our first, second, and third tactic to help us reach our second objective. So underneath each objective, there's going to be 3 tactics. And under each tactic, there's going to be 3 individual actions. So think about a pyramid that's kind of flipped upside down. At the bottom is going to be a number of different actions that the different departments in your organization are going to take, and they're going to each be a tactic. So let's put some scenarios to this. Let's say our objective is to grow the margins at 20%. So then our first letter A would be, we want to increase brand awareness. Then we're going to come up with 3 different actions to help us increase brand awareness. Our letter B, underneath trying to grow the margins by 20%, is going to be a cost. We're going to say our tactic number 2 to help us reach our first objective is going to be a cost-cutting measures by 5% across the board. Then we're going to go into 3 specific actions. So the actions may be an insurance review. They could have a number of different actions. We're still trying to reach our objective, though, our number 1 objective of trying to increase margins by 20%. So our first was to do brand awareness. Our second was to decrease our expenses. Our third may be to increase sales by 3%. And so by increasing the sales by 3%, now we're going to create 3 actions to help us increase our sales by 3%. And so if you follow the methodology, you end up having 9 different actions per objective. So for each objective, you have 3 different tactics and 9 different actions. So if you're confused utterly right now, I'm going to challenge you to go to the Financially Simple blog and look at the graphic that we'll have with this particular podcast. It'll help you understand that by being very, very specific in our strategic planning, that we will reach success. And you're like, Justin, you have lost me in this. And you're probably shaking your head. Now, Justin, I don't understand your actions and tactics and objectives and all that stuff. Okay, I get that. But here's why all this matters. If we're doing strategic planning and we're trying to grow the value of our company, if we do not take time to boil down the specific steps per quarter or per year that needs to take place within our organization, we are left floundering. Yeah, we may end up with having a net income increase, and we may be scurrying to try to keep up with the revenue, but that is not a value increase in the company. We're after, in this series, trying to grow the value of our company, and strategic planning, friends, is one of the best things you can do. Whenever I work with strategic planning in my own company, it adds so much clarity to our team. We just did this strategic planning meeting, as I've mentioned a couple of times, in my company, Heritage Investors. Heritage Investors is our registered investment advisor with the SEC, and the disclaimer there says just because we're registered doesn't mean it's an endorsement, et cetera, et cetera. So by no means am I saying you've got to work with us. It's just a factual point that Heritage Investors is registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission as a registered investment advisor, and there are many others out there, so that's who we are. But in our company, we were talking about our 3 top objectives. Whenever the team finally started understanding that for every objective, we have 3 tactics, and for every tactic, we have 3 action steps. Whenever we completed our strategic planning, we walked out of that meeting with such clarity. And here we are now almost a month removed from our meeting, and we're probably already 30% toward our 6-month goal, because there was such defined clarity. And you say, well, Justin, can you see the immediate results? we're starting to see the rain. You know, it's kind of like when a boat goes by. I took the boys down to the river the other day to go swim, and it was hot. Oh, my goodness, it was hot in July. We had been doing some work around the farm, and so I said, boys, let's get on the four-wheeler and run down to the river and take a dip. So we got on the four-wheeler, drove down to the river, went swimming for a little bit. There was a big barge that came by carrying some, I think it was coal, to one of the power plants here in Tennessee. And we watched the tugs push it up the river. And as they went by, I said, boys, there are going to be some big wakes here that are coming off this boat. So we're sitting there, and then there was little waves. And all of a sudden, the waves started getting bigger. And before you know it, it felt like we were in the ocean. The waves were coming in real big. Out of strategic planning, I can honestly say that we're 30 days removed from our company's strategic planning, and I can feel the waves. I know there's big ones coming as a result already of that strategic planning. But friends, it would never happen. It would never happen unless we got very super specific on the actual steps that have to be taken and who's going to do it and how are we going to measure success and how are we going to know on a weekly basis if we're out to achieve that success. And with that, let's wrap up the strategic planning series. So now that we understand strategic planning is vital for the company's growth and how it works, in the next few series, we're going to talk about some other planning that you can do in your business. Some various types of business planning. So with that, guys, hey, thanks for joining me on the Financially Simple podcast. As always, and as I've said a couple of times, go to financiallysimple.com under the heading podcast and take a look at the episode here, especially this one. It's going to have a cool graphic with it to help you understand what we're talking about. But friends, if you do strategic planning right, it makes a difference in your business. Hey, while you're listening to the podcast, do me a favor. Like the show if you like it. Share it with a friend. If you don't like it, share it anyways. As I say every week, life is hard, life is good, and life can be frustrating. Money doesn't have to be. Let's continue to make our lives at least financially simple. Y'all go out and make it a great day.
You have been listening to the Financially Simple podcast. The information in this show is for informational purposes only. This show is not investment advice. Instead, seek help from a competent financial advisor. Justin Goodbread, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Heritage Investors, a registered investment advisor.